This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 8th of April, 2019, and I am 2J.
I am JM, sitting in for 2M.
And I am Miss K, your host. Again, in case you missed it, this is Winning Headlines. Let's take a look at today's headlines. Daily Nation. Raila party paying for past sins, say leaders.
Yes.
The Standard, Boda Boda time bomb. And The Star, DCI probes 200 million shilling CS bribe demand.
Wow.
What do we begin with?
I mean, right now there's no unity across the headlines.
As always happens when there is no news.
Yeah.
So let's start with the Daily Nation.
All
Raila
right.
party paying for past sins, says
You know,
leaders.
contestations for power will always breed the dominant and the dominated. Now, within NASA, ODM is the dominant party.
Yes.
And it has been a bully, but it's also, I think, a party with very fragile feet. You know, it's a party with a feet of clay.
That is true.
And this has been exposed in the last 2 weeks. These are probably also the effects of the handshake.
Yeah.
I think they are. I mean, this weekend, Oburu Odinga made a statement and said that Raila should exit the handshake because it's not doing him any good.
And that's been trending this morning, actually.
It has, yeah.
Do you
Dr.
agree?
Save us.
Yeah. Do you agree that Raila should quit the handshake? Is it doing him more harm
I don't. It depends.
than good?
It depends. It depends.
I think some of the cartoons will actually speak to
that,
right?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know whether we'll be preemptive of our conversation later. But I will say this: it depends. What was his purpose for joining the handshake? And if he were to leave it, who will benefit? Who's the winner? Who's the loser? Is it him? Is it the president? Is it Ruto?
Raila, as we know him, is a destructive force, destructive energy. So when he goes in
your
opinion,
opinion,
he in my view, at least in politics, right?
Yes.
That's his modus operandi.
Well,
so I think if he leaves Jubilee at this point, if he leaves the handshake, then he's gonna have done it quite some damage.
But if he leaves the handshake, because currently he's sitting pretty, he's in a good situation, right? If he leaves the handshake, what is he leaving it to go to?
Hold on. Yes, last week I thought he was sitting pretty in a really good position. For this reason, we had the State of the Nation, opposition was sitting together, unified. The cartoons showed this unity of thought in which Ruto was excluded. So 2022 in the bag. But, and as you said, he's a destructive force. That's true, Jem is very right. And as we see it, Jubilee is split. Gema is split. If that was his intention, then I think achieved. So if he, at the risk of having also was in his back.
So what would he be leaving Jubilee or the handshake to go to? There's nothing for him on either side.
Well, he still has a party that's intact.
We don't know about his supporters and his coalition, but we do know that he still has ODM, and NASA has been dead. We've been saying this for a very long time.
Yes.
I feel like this is an old
So, I
story.
mean, going back to what JM pointed at, the trending topic on Twitter right now, Dr. Buru Save Us or something along those lines. What do you guys think about his own brother, you know, going against what he is saying? They're not having a unity as well of thought.
No, the Odinga brothers never speak at odds ends. They are always unified in their thoughts. So perhaps what Oburu is doing is giving you a precursor of what Raila is going to do. So if Oburu says, Raila, leave, Raila is going to leave. And you had it first here on Winning Headlines.
All right. I think.
All right.
Before
So
we toss it,
yes.
let me bring back our audience and inform JM of our criteria that we use to break down the headlines for you. We ask ourselves 3 questions. Is that headline topical or is it speculative? Is that headline repetitive or is it groundbreaking? And is that headline thoughtful or lazy?
It's repetitive. It is repetitive, and I think it is also lazy.
Yeah.
This is old news. This was news for Saturday and maybe even Sunday at most.
Yeah.
Okay.
But surely today,
We toss it. We toss.
Toss that one.
The Star, DCI probes 200 million CS bribe demand. TJ, do you want to give us a reminder, quick run through of our
so this is the damn story on and on and on again. So I think there's only one new piece of information that has come to light, and that there's a CS who asked his PS to sign a document with the promise of a kickback of 200 million shillings.
And this is to release
Yes.
more,
To
even
unlock some more funds.
from Treasury, because
Yeah.
we all know exactly how much had been released, 21
Exactly.
million.
Yes.
And now they wanted to release an extra,
Extra,
amount, but with the promise of a kickback.
And so the PS refused to sign this piece of paper, whatever it was, and now has become a witness against the CS. But of course, at this point, these are all unnamed characters.
This is all unfolding like a
Soap
what do you call
opera.
it? A soap opera,
Yeah.
absolutely. And this is very typical of the Star. You know, they pander to the basic instincts of Kenyans,
That's
right?
true.
Something that is captivating, something that's
Emotive.
interesting.
You
This
splash
is
a large
definitely
number,
a
yeah.
headline that you want to pick up. I feel like it's a little bit, though speculative, a little bit repetitive, but still, nonetheless, it's one that will be read by many. But politics is also about perception. I think it's time that heads began to roll, if at all, that is the intention.
Yeah, and I think
right?
if we are going to compare it to a soap opera, this is a boring soap opera. You know,
Yeah,
at
they-
least
Nothing ever happened.
At least on days of our lives, you know, people die, then they come back to life, and we're all shocked. Can some heads roll, as JM is saying?
Absolutely,
I
because the
don't know.
government now is beginning to look like it's all bark and no bite,
Yeah.
right? Very weak.
Yeah,
So-
you,
I say toss it
yeah, I'm not
because
feeling it.
I'm not feeling
Yeah.
it. I'm so over.
Yeah.
I'm done biting.
As we said, it was only one new piece of information. Otherwise, it's the same old
done
regurgitated
biting.
story. Yeah.
Final headline, The Standard, Boda Boda time bomb. Standard has, I don't know, I know we bashed them for the story that they gave us on depression, saying that there was no context, it was not topical. But I think they're trying to do something different. They're trying
Yeah.
to make us think, give us different opinions, different
Conversational.
Absolutely.
topics.
So unlike the Star, these guys are appealing to intellect, which is commendable,
Well,
right?
yeah.
it's true. We can give a bit of context. The
Yeah.
National Crime Research Center issued a report yesterday about the relationship between Boda Boda riding and the prevalence of Boda Bodas in our
Yes,
country and
yes.
an increase in crime.
Yeah.
It's trying to find that correlation. And based off of that report, the Standard is giving us this expose with a bit of fact, a bit of
Yeah.
Speculation. Yeah.
But either way, it makes us think.
Yeah, I think this
It
is
does.
a great story, you know, considering the fact that with the amount of Boda Bodas that we see, I mean, they said 1.3 million motorcycles registered as of February 2018.
But I have to give our context. So I went back and tried to find this report. The
Yeah.
goodness of doing winning headlines at the end of the day is that we can read the report after
And then
looking at the
verify.
headline. They say that in 2007, there were less than 100,000 registered motorcycles in
Yes.
Kenya. So
Yeah.
if you add that
Yes.
a little over 10 years.
Apparently today there's 20,000 border borders on the roads every month. New border borders on the roads.
Bringing in
every
a
month,
lot of money.
right?
It's true. They
Yeah,
gave
yeah.
a report last
It's
year.
got a huge revenue base, probably even bigger than Safaricom. It's been said.
Yes, it has been said. 7 billion
Right.
shillings bigger than M-Pesa. That is no small feat.
Absolutely. But very interesting. So one of the proposals I was reading in here is that they want to get them registered in SACCOs. And I think that would be a good way to go about accountability.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fantastic
I have
idea.
to
Right.
say this though, you know,
What do
we
you
do
think?
have our alter ego in this organization that does research on militia and crime in our country and security. And we have done research and found that originally gangs were controlling the transport industry in the matatu industry.
Yes.
And when SACCOs were introduced, they had to morph out. And Boda Bodas was one way in which they morphed out because the regulation
Yeah.
of the industry
Yeah.
forced them
Yeah.
to move into other sectors. And perhaps they are right. They do say that 71.9% of Boda Boda riders are hired on a casual basis to engage in crimes.
Historically as well, even in Kenya, there's always been that correlation between crime and transport. Better
Yeah.
modes of transport,
And I
easier
think
modes of
one
transport.
really important point we had discussed
this is-
earlier was the fact that it's the youth who are unemployed, they cannot find access to good jobs that pay well. And I think one important point to highlight is the fact that a lot of the money that we mentioned that flows through the Boda Boda industry does not stay with those Boda Boda drivers. It goes back to the owners of those motorcycles. So
That's very true.
But border riders also make a killing because I was making this observation the other day, right? If I was to send an Uber driver, let's say right now on an errand to Gong Road, I'll probably pay about 600 shillings or thereabouts, right? On a border, I'd probably be charged about 1,000 bob.
Yeah, which is
Right?
significantly less.
And
even
and
if
how
it
much are
does-
these guys consuming for fuel and maintenance of their their thing? Not
The
much.
startup cost, I think, is very low.
So they basically should be making good
Money.
returns.
And
That's
my point is I'm disagreeing with that. I do not
you
think
don't-
they make good money.
They do.
I think a lot of the money leaves their pockets.
So-
Services like Uber, they take their commissions. Most of these border drivers don't even own their motorcycles. They hire them on a weekly basis from wealthy, capitalists.
But
So-
what I can say is, you see, it made us think, and we're here
Very true.
having
Absolutely.
a discussion. So can
Absolutely.
we say
Not a
that
mindless
the
discussion.
Standard has our winning headline for the day? It
I
is
would-
Most
thoughtful,
certainly.
I would
it's
agree.
groundbreaking, and it's topical.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's very true.
Standard, our winning
Superb.
headline for the day. We keep it
Border time
on.
bomb.
And on to our next segment, the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country.
Yes, yes,
Just
yes, yes.
like the headlines, we have a 3-part criteria that we use to break them down for you. We ask ourselves, is the cartoon humorous or is it dry? Is it satirical or is it pessimistic? And finally, is it effective or just plain
Plain
lazy? Since the Standard was our winning headline, let's start with them
All right.
and see what Gado
Yeah.
has for us today.
We say it time and time again. Gado draws and speaks for an international audience.
But I
Yes.
think for the first time, JM had a good criteria for
Yeah.
us in judging Gado. Sometimes I think we're too harsh on him, and he's given me a response.
Absolutely. And what I was saying is, for some of us who are not international news buffs, Gado has a way of reminding us of what's happening in the continent of Africa, across the world.
Yeah.
And he does it in a very creative, thoughtful way. So this, very good, superb. I commend him for these types of pieces.
Yeah. And I think the context in this story is that there was there's a spat that happened in Libya
Yes.
this past weekend,
Yes.
where 21 people were killed and 27 injured. And that was a fight between the government, the UN-backed government, and the rebel forces, which are led by a former general.
But
Yeah.
I
Who
like
might be aligned
to
to
Gaddafi.
Gaddafi,
Very true.
Gaddafi's
and his
son.
son. But I have to say that looking at this cartoon, I was reminded of the freedom liberation speech that was had. Nicolas Sarkozy David Cameron, and in Tripoli, just after the fall of Tripoli. And I don't know.
This is the work of the bad Samaritans. People who come under the
Nice
guise
plug.
under a guise to help
Yeah.
Africa, but actually they're creating more problems.
No problems. That's very true.
I have to say that I can't say that
NATO and company.
dictator-led Libya was that bad. It looks
Yeah.
worse off now.
It does.
Yeah, I know,
Absolutely.
and maybe we could pose this question: if given the option, would the people of Libya want to go back to a Gaddafi time?
I don't know.
rule?
Maybe
Most
they
probably,
would.
most probably.
Maybe they would.
Yeah.
Maybe they
The
would.
majority of people obviously enjoy peace, stability. That's better for
But
life.
I will say the reason I don't like this cartoon is because I think it looks messy and cluttered. It's disturbing
is.
my brain.
It is, and you
But
have
that's
to
the
really
whole
look.
point,
Yeah,
right?
I-
It's supposed to disturb your brain. It
But can we
is.
put it in the parking bay then?
But-
Because
All right.
we are
Yeah.
conflicted
To
over
be
it.
fair.
Daily Nation.
All right.
Is it Monena
Iga.
today?
No,
No,
it's Iga.
Iga.
Huduma number. Can we sneak our names into your register at a fee?
Of course
story
that's
is-
gonna happen.
This cartoon is a week late, and that's my
Yeah.
biggest problem. It's not even topical. Yes,
No,
but still,
yeah.
yes, Huduma registration is ongoing, but the issues around it, you can't be bringing up these things when people are registering.
I don't know. Is
This-
this a hit at ghost numbers?
Yeah. It is.
It
It is.
could
You
be.
remember the
What
president told us that with the Huduma number, we will be able to expose all the ghosts. They exposed 5,000
Ghost police,
ghost workers
yeah.
when they did this on the police. And so I think this is actually a jab at the remarks of the president. Because what he's telling us here is even if you give us Huduma number, we will still infiltrate the system and it's still prone to manipulation. Right?
But one of our criteria is that is it
a little
pessimistic?
bit pessimistic.
it-
So my
pessimistic.
question is now
And
you
then
give
on a
us
week
this,
later, as you say.
give us this cartoon. So now what do I do with it? What solution are you providing?
It might be unimaginative, boring.
Lazy.
Throw it out.
Completely.
I'm
Toss
so
it.
sorry.
All right.
It's
Goodbye.
not even worth
Finally.
spending it on.
The Star.
I am so impressed by this guy. What's his name?
Ozone.
Ozone.
He's
Brilliant.
getting better every day.
This is the best cartoon I've seen all year.
Are you serious?
You see, it is. It is for two
Are you
reasons. Let me
serious?
tell you.
Okay, let him say.
Number one, if you look at it closely, right? There's a thread connecting the sweater and the short there, right?
I think they were
Which
pads.
could have
Can
been which could have been a trouser earlier, and then the bottom is orange.
yeah,
Top is.
and the top is red.
Red.
It's red.
Wait, so hold on. Before
Miss Kay.
we get into the analysis, I think we need to describe the cartoon first.
Yes.
So
Okay.
that our audience know what we're looking
Before
at
we
and
break
why
it
we
down.
are. Yeah. So here we have somebody who would appear to look like Raila Odinga, and he knitting.
Yeah.
So we don't know what the context is. Is he taking fabric from his trousers to add to his shirt, or taking from his shirt to add to his trousers?
I think he's taking from his pants what used to be ODM to add to his.
And this is all in the context of the handshake, as we were discussing earlier.
The elections that happened this past weekend.
Precisely.
Because he's sitting on a stool written.
Because he seems to be gaining, so you see he's got a pot belly, right? which he probably is going to cover. And the top represents the handshake, you know, the partnership of Jubilee.
And the orange of ODM.
And he seems like he's making gains there,
but
at the expense of his Kenyasa.
Which I have to point out is going to expose his most important nether regions. But Ozone, being a very careful and caring gentleman, has left a pot belly to hide.
And so
is this why Dr. Oburu is being asked to come and save the constituents of Raila Odinga?
Perhaps, because you win some, you lose some, and he's winning in the context of the handshake, but he's also losing in the context of Embakasi and Ugenya.
I think it's a fantastic cartoon. Is it the best of the year? I don't think so. I still think Gado.
Last week.
Okay.
When you were away last week, we gave Cartoon of the Year to Gado, waiting for him to be unseated. It was the State of the Nation, and it was hilarious. It was fantastic. So check it out and compare it against this. Then tomorrow we could put it up against. We could review.
But I will say, maybe not the Cartoon of the Year, but the Cartoon of the Day.
Cartoon of the Day.
Yeah.
Ozone winning cartoon from the Do we have a final thought?
Yes, I think we do have our final thought. I think it's in reference to the Court of Appeal decision this past Friday.
Yes, regarding the dissolution of Parliament.
Yeah, and I think, Ms. K, you can give us some. What does that mean now?
Okay, so the fifth schedule of the Constitution gave a schedule of pieces of legislation that had to be passed by Parliament, and it gave a timeline for those pieces to be passed. Yes. And if any of those pieces were not passed, then the transitional and consequential provisions within the Constitution gave consequences for Parliament. Now, these consequences were that should any of those pieces not be passed, then any person could petition the High Court. The High Court then gives an order giving Parliament a timeline in which to pass the legislation. If Parliament doesn't pass the legislation within that timeline, the Chief Justice can then ask the President, in fact, order him, because he shall tell the President to dissolve Parliament,
and the Parliament shall
dissolve Parliament.
Yes, absolutely.
Now,
so in sum, Parliament risks being dissolved.
Yes,
because of one piece of legislation
the
that
gender
they
bill,
refused to
as
pass.
we all know.
So, and what they said, and I think this is interesting that the Court of Appeal said this, they said that you could either begin a new petition or you could revive an existing one. And one does exist, and it has a 60-day timeline. So I don't know, is Parliament ready for 60 days before we elect again?
Point remains, we have been saying this for a long time. We have been consistent on our opinion, and we've done a very good job of laying out what the timeline of this would look like. So I think only time will tell.
And I think an opportunity could well present itself to the President to Maraga. And if he could dissolve an election, if he could rather nullify an election, right?
Presidential election.
And if he could call judges one day before the repeat election.
Oh, yes.
What for? Probably to dissolve, to also stall that election. Then it's
what's to say he wouldn't?
It's not
it's
a question
probable
of
that he
if,
could.
then it's a question of when.
Yeah, precisely.
So Parliament,
it's a question of
you
when.
have been served notice. This is Winning Headlines. Thank you, and see you tomorrow.
Thanks.